Good morning, Foothills family. I am so honored to get to share with those of you who have continued to pursue God with these Foothills devotionals. Today, I get to share one of my favorite Psalms, which is Psalm 139. And I want to share this Psalm for two reasons. The first is that it boldly reminds us that our perception of God affects how we live our life. How we view God and our understanding of how he interacts with us sets the stage for every thought and decision that we make. Psalm 139 transcends all ages and seasons of life because it's going to continually challenge us to trust that God is ultimately in control. The second reason I chose this psalm is personal and really a testimony to me. I didn't give my life to the Lord until I was 21. I was living on my own. I was living according to the world's standards. And right or wrong was really situational for me and based on how I felt rather than any type of concrete or moral law. And in those early seasons of my Christian faith, meditating on this psalm, it helped break the lie that I was in control, that I was self-sufficient, and that my sin was justified. And that was defining and made this psalm sentimental to me. In Psalm 139, David confidently proclaims God as all-knowing and omnipotent, which really just means he is everywhere. And he clearly shows that all of man's life is in God's hands and that every need man has is addressed effortlessly by God alone. Today, I want to point out three fundamental needs we as humans, not just as Christians, but as humans have and how God addresses them. The first core need we have is to be known and accepted. David shares that nothing about him is hidden from God, neither internally nor externally. In verse 1 through 4, he says, Lord, you have searched me and know me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You understand my thought from afar. You scrutinize my path and my lying down and are intimately acquainted with all of my ways, even before there is a word on my tongue. Behold, O Lord, you know it all. I love this. You see, we feel loved when we are known, whether it's by our spouse or a friend or a family member. But David here is saying God stands outside of all of them. He is intimately far better at knowing us than anyone on this earth could possibly be. God not only knows what we've done and what we've said, but he knows our thoughts even before we think them, which could be kind of scary for some of us. So I want to agree in this proclamation that David makes, which is that God is personal to us, that he knows us, and he accepts us as we are. The second core need we have as humans is the need for relationship. David goes on to affirm the truth that God is always present, which means we are never alone. In verse 7 through 10, he says, where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, behold, you are there. If I take the wings of the dawn, if I dwell in the remotest part of the sea, even there your hand will lead me, and your right hand will lay hold of me. You see, God does not strive to be near to us. As David said, he is simply there. He is always with us. He created us, and he wants relationship with us. So for a minute, I want to talk about loneliness. Loneliness is one of the leading causes of depression in our culture right now. It's marked by low self-esteem and the feeling of unworthiness. And then we throw a pandemic in the mix, and we are asked to separate and social distance and not be with each other, which only exasperates this feeling. And so together, now more than ever, I want us to agree with David's proclamation of the truth that we are never alone, and that God is with us and he desires relationship with us. The third core need we have as humans is to have purpose in our life. David makes the point that God knows the beginning from the end, that he personally created each one of us, and from that moment on, all of our days were written out. In verse 13 through 16, he says, "For you formed my inward parts, and you wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made, and my soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the depths of the earth. Your eyes have seen my unformed substance, and in your book were all written the days that were ordained for me. As yet there was not even one." You see, your looks and your personality were thought out and designed and formed by God himself, and he called them wonderful. So despite what you think about yourself or how you feel, God calls you wonderful. And it's safe to say that if you are alive and breathing, that you have a plan and a purpose in your life. And so shortly after I gave my life to the Lord, my identity had a huge shift. I went from a worldly mindset to a kingdom mindset. And honestly, I was a little lost. I didn't know my purpose. I really didn't have any goals. But luckily, I was in a place where God could speak to me, and that was church. And I won't ever forget this particular Sunday because it really transformed my life. I was at church and Pastor Dave spoke, and he said, "If you are lost, get your eyes off yourself and into God's work, and he will bring about his purpose and his plan for your life." And it pierced me, and I took it to heart, and I began to volunteer at Youth Venture and in the high school ministry. I began ministering to young people. I learned that I love to plan events, which I still do for the church today. And God did do exactly what David said, is he every day began to unfold his purpose and plan for my life. And it was a God-centered, rich, and fulfilling plan. And so I want us to agree with David's proclamation of this truth, that we are all fearfully and wonderfully made individually, and that God will ordain our steps as we follow him. I want to close with this in verse 23 and 24. David closes his confident proclamation of who God is with honor and humility. He uses similar verbiage that he opened the psalm with, and he says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxious thoughts, and see if there be any hurtful way in me, and lead me into the everlasting way." I love this because in essence, David is saying, God, I give you full permission to keep doing what you are so good at, which is leading me. David acknowledges that he has anxious thoughts, which are really just lack of trust. We can all relate with that, and that he has sin in his life. But he confirms that he will trust in God, and despite himself, God will continue to lead him. I hope you guys are encouraged today, knowing that God knows you, he's near to you, he designed you with a plan and a purpose, and you can be free, that you are not in control, but our Heavenly Father is. Have a good day.